Welcome to Investories, a podcast about real stories, real estate, and taking real action. Join hosts John Hooper and Kyle Robertson as they talk investing, mindset, and taking that first step. We all have a story. What's yours? The Investories Podcast.
Booyah!
There it is.
It is. Hey, that's a familiar voice.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
I thought you'd forgotten about us.
How could I ever forget about John, right? Come on.
Wait, yeah, I'm John Hooper, and with me,
Kyle Robertson.
there we go. I like it. Very professional.
Thank you.
So how you doing?
Okay, I'm doing solid. Doing really, really good. Yeah.
Lots of travels.
Yeah, I've been out and about for a couple of weeks, and we're kind of just getting back in the swing of things, and it's
Back to reality.
I shaved that giant mess off my face now. It's almost kind of growing back. It's back on the 15th that I shaved it off. So
Are you going to try and grow it back? That's the question I need to ask you.
that's a hard no. No, no, absolutely.
It's a lot of maintenance, surely.
Well, some people just aren't meant to grow facial hair, and I learned over the last 365 days that I fall into that category.
Me too.
So,
I like the idea of a beard, but I get to a certain level and then I'm like, I can't be bothered anymore. It's too much work to grow a beard.
Right. Well, the problem
Plus,
is that it was too much. It was so much work for me that I just decided not to do it. And so my beard looked awful. It was just like every once in a while I'd comb it. I'd wash it, 1 or 2 times a day, which apparently you're not supposed to do. And I just never could make it look good. I just thought it looked like a complete dirtbag that should be in the alleyway somewhere. But,
hobo adjacent, I think I'd describe it as.
Exactly.
So yeah, welcome back. Good to have you back. I've been flying
Thanks,
solo.
man.
Hopefully you tuned into a few of the episodes.
Of course.
Sure. Of course, man. So really interesting conversation today. And we've been doing a lot of thoughts kind of on this, which is Kyle and I are trying to figure out still what Investories is, and probably shouldn't be saying that 30 odd episodes in. But we've got a really good conversation with a guy called Scott Morse, who owns Lamassu Media, and they deal with lead generation, and they also do wholesaling acquisition. And we really like this aspect of investing, and really the kind of real estate investing meets entrepreneurship and business ownership and management and all that good stuff. So I got a lot out of this conversation. So much about goal setting, grinding, hustling, and just good kind of input into getting your mind right, reading the right books and things like that. So that was super useful. Kyle, I think you enjoyed the conversation.
I tell you what, Scott is he's kind of a rare type of a fella. This guy he's confident. He's got a lot of energy. And this is not a space that I'm familiar with, although I own real estate and I get a lot of phone calls from people who are looking to essentially generate the leads, exactly what it is that Scott Morse company Lamassu is doing. I've never really taken the time, admittedly, to look into that industry and see who it is that's on the other end of the line. Scott kind of breaks some of this down for us and tells us about how that company works on the other side of the line. And, he built this and he's built other companies, other call centers, and it's a really super interesting industry. And what it comes down to is it's just sales. And Scott's got some really great tips for anybody. Things like building funnels, how you figure out whether or not a lead is worth your time or not. So listen to this episode, even if you don't care about making phone calls, cold calling, seller leads, any of that stuff. So many good pieces in this, just about sales in general. And if you're in real estate, chances are you've got to have some sort of a hand in sales. So check it out.
And don't forget to like, review, and subscribe our show.
5 stars.
5 stars. Don't bring your 4 stars, bring the 5 stars.
That's right.
Anyway, speaking of stars, here's Scott. Welcome to Investories, Scott Morse. Hi, Scott.
Hey, how's it going, fellas? Good morning.
How are you doing?
Doing fantastic and amazing, guys. Rocking and rolling here in beautiful Colombia, South America. Just having a monster end of the week, too. About to close out the month strong as well.
That's amazing. We really want to get into that. So, first of all, Colombia, you're our first international guest. So,
wow.
Congratulations. Yeah, we haven't even been to Canada yet, Kyle.
Oh, geez, man, we're falling behind. It's bad.
So you've been in Colombia for what, 3 years, 3 or 4 years, I think, I read. So talk me through the move. Why Colombia? Why 3 or 4 years ago? What happened?
Sure. My pleasure. So I was never in the real estate space until about 2.5, 3 years ago. So entering into the real estate industry is what led me into Colombia. I had a massive Florida operation, large call center selling leads to attorneys for like 7 years. And that grew into a monster campaign, 180 employees, the whole works, going up against Wall Street traded companies. Like, it was a monster company. Once that campaign finally sunsetted, I heard about like wholesaling and stuff. And I was like, oh, I'll just take like that model and insert it into my call center. And long story short, after you start looking at the numbers, the lead cost that you need for this industry, this vertical, I had to be offshore. And so that sent me out on a journey to outsource it. And then I found that everybody was morons that I was outsourcing it to. So I was like, honey, let's go get on a plane. We're moving to South America. So
Amazing. No, that's really interesting. And I think one of the things I found interesting, kind of reading up on you, reading on your background was, and you throw it in there, is the casual, oh, we were selling leads to attorneys, right? But that lead selling process is like the gold that wholesalers and a lot of other real estate professionals are really looking for. So how did you get started in that kind of lead generation space?
I think for me, it was a necessity for scaling, because when you're relying, I almost like an Apple product, it's a closed loop service. And so when you can generate your own leads, you don't have to be, you're resilient against the outside. And so with just any campaign, I'm always my own biggest customer, as well as I sell leads to external people. Because once you're at a certain capacity, you can't necessarily handle it, or it's one of those things like, hey, I want to dig gold and sell shovels at the same time. But it all just started from me being like, hey, listen, I don't want to trust anybody else's marketing sources. I understand digital media well enough. I understand the cold call mechanisms well enough that I can house it and be my own incubator for every test pilot campaign and just kind of scale from there. And that's what led me on that journey to do it myself.
That's awesome, man. That's incredible. And I want to dig more into the business here in just a little bit, as far as the nuts and bolts and what exactly it is that you guys do over there. But tell us a little bit more about Scott. I'm curious about what your background is. I'm curious about, I understand that you haven't been in the real estate space specifically for a really long time, but you have been in sales. I mean, this is sales, right? So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got here.
So I appreciate it. Yeah. I think that I'm my own ideal avatar. And so when I have my clients, a lot of them sound and feel and kind of act mannerisms like me, which is, I honest to God, I'm not college educated. I have a boat ton of money, right? But I made it from just pure grind and hustle and self-education and putting my nose down and just staying focused. And so I found professional sales at 20 years old, and I consumed every teeny tiny thing that I could about sales strategy, sales tactics. I was in high ticket sales from 20 to 32 before I started my own company. Now it's 10 years later, but dude, I'm all about sales. I'm all about power of persuasion. I'm all about being able to scale a team and kind of grow them and mature them and handle the marketing. So yeah, man, I'm just a kid from Richmond, Virginia. I was telling the story the other day. This is a podcast or a video I submitted out there. My company in South Florida got so big that there was legislation being passed to put us out of business, because we were a thorn in the side of some people, and we ended up having to bribe a politician. But it's not called bribing politicians; it's called campaign contributions. And so we're literally at this fancy Miami restaurant. This politician from Tallahassee came down. We're sitting around this big table. We hand him a $50,000 campaign contribution, and I remember thinking, just like you said there, I remember thinking like, what in the world have I got myself? I'm just kind of like a redneck from Richmond, Virginia. And now I'm down here, we're talking big boy deals, and I'm handing a politician a check for $50,000. It was the craziest thing ever.
You've arrived, man. That's what it is.
Evidently.
You've arrived. You're doing what the big boys do. You're bribing politicians, man.
Campaign contribution. Hey, when we handed him the check, hold on. When we handed him the check, it was so funny. We didn't know, like, you don't actually hand it to him. You hand it to his people. So at the table, we like handed it directly to him. He's like, oh, just passes it to her real quick. Like, I don't want to be seen on camera grabbing a check from this guy. Scott,
yeah, right.
No way.
Was it one of those big novelty checks as well?
Wouldn't that have been great? Just open up the jacket, pull it out. Yeah, man.
That's awesome. So I think one of the things that I was really interested in that story, in your story, and you alluded to it just there, and kind of what's going on with Lamassu, right? I'm pronouncing that right, I think.
Yeah, Lamassu. Yeah.
How do these businesses scale for you? Or how do you enact that scale? How do you build out a business to grow so quickly where others kind of flounder?
This is my third big company, and it's faster every time. I got to 100. The last company, it took me 7 years to get to 180 people. This time it took me 2 years, and we're now north of 180 people. November 15th, we moved into a 23,000 square foot office, and that allowed me to get into the threes, easy breezy, into the 300s. So it's been sequentially easier. It's just easier, right? Because you could take every dollar I have away, but you'll never take away the experience. And so I just understand the mechanics. I understand the sales culture probably better than most people in the industry. Like our morning meetings are everything that you would see in a Wolf of Wall Street or a Boiler Room or whatever movie, and not in a negative connotation, but in a like, hey, listen, we are motivating people to give their all, to leave it on the field every single day. We created a culture where it's teamwork, where it's accountability, where weak people weed themselves out. And so it's just like understanding like, hey, everybody looks at me, so I better be the hardest working guy in this office. I better bust my ass, hold myself accountable harder than everybody else. And so that's like the intangibles before you talk about all the like, how to recruit and how to structure your pay and all that other stuff.
Dude, that's incredible, and I love that. And John, you better use this one for a quote, just because it's one of my more favorite things that any of our guests have said, which is you can take away all my money, but you can't take away the experience. I think that was it. I might have butchered it just a little bit, but God, how big is that, right? We can fail, and I've got a thing on my wall back here that says failure is an option. You can fail 100 times, which ends up being the best educator. But when you come back, that it's up here now. You can do it again, and you can do it better, and you can do it faster. And God, that's incredible. Good on you guys. I got to ask, because I love speaking with business owners who've arrived, who've been there, who've done that. So give us a couple tips, especially for people that listen to this, because this is Investories. We talk about not just real estate, but anybody who's investing, anybody who's starting businesses. I would love to know what you think to that, what you'd say to that 20-year-old kid who's listening to this right now, and they want to know how they actually just start out operating a business. Give us a couple of basics that have been most successful for you.
It's going to be so rudimentary, most people will let it slide by. And so I think that before you start a business, you got to have that mindset that's going to make you resilient to what's going to happen. Because like Tyson said, right, like everybody thinks they can fight till they get punched in the mouth. Well, congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Business Owner. You're going to get punched in the mouth. You're going to get kicked in the stomach. And so for me, it was just, and again, it sounds so trivial and naive, but I knew what I wanted, and then I made sure it was everywhere in my life. Like if you go to, I literally just cleaned in one of my bathroom, the master bathroom. I have my own, my side of the bathroom. I literally just cleaned off all the glass mirror yesterday from all the markers and stuff. I'm 42 years old. I have multiple 7- and 8-figure campaigns, and I'm still writing out and envisioning all the stuff that I need to do for my goals. And I still do my morning rituals the same way I did when I was 22 years old. So for me, it's just like, hey, what do I want my business to look like? Let me make sure I'm visualizing that every single day. Let me make sure I'm holding myself to grow into the person that I know that it takes to be that person. And then reading the books. So I'm a huge proponent and believer of you are the equal of your 5 closest friends. And when I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, I didn't have 5 people I wanted to be equal of. So I found them in books, man. Like I was like, dude, I want to be just like Zig Ziglar. I want to be just like Tom Hopkins. I want to be just like Tony Robbins. I want to be just like these guys. And I consume their content so much. Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, very few people in this country know more about his story than I do, because it just connected with me. He was adopted. Now I wasn't adopted, but I connected with the story and how he started the restaurant. And so, dude, I just incubated myself mindset wise, studying the best autobiographies of these guys and their books. And I said, I can take pieces of all that and make my own. And that's what I did.
That's awesome. And I think, diving into books is great. And I've been like one of those people that, you know, process loads of audiobooks, and that's always good and have a few on the go. But actually, sometimes it's worth slowing that down and getting to know the subject and getting to know kind of the ins and outs, and really pick up the voice as well as the kind of core messaging and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's a few that I'm now going back and re-listening to and taking notes and being a bit more in depth or intentional about my attention to that. It's not something that just happens while I'm doing something else.
So I never knew I was going to be an old guy until I turned into one. So when I trained like we even have in our sales floor, we have a library where they can, dude, I've collected so many books over my life. They can go into my personal library on the sales floor. They have to check it out. If they don't return it, they get charged a fee. But these are like real deal books, mindset books, like a really phenomenal, I believe a phenomenal collection. But what I trained them is, hey, use an orange highlighter. That's what I did. And I didn't know when I was younger that yellow highlights fade. And so what you were talking about, audiobook versus written book. So I learned that my oranges stay around for decades and decades. And it's so good for me to go back into those books and literally just hit the highlights. I'll literally just hit the highlights, remind myself of the stuff that I already forgot I knew, and then just bolt back out, even in today's age.
I like that. One thing you touched upon briefly, and I'm doing a course at the moment, which is really, really good. And it's really got me thinking about goals and breaking down goals into kind of manageable, digestible steps. How do you goal set? So you say about in your half of the bathroom, which is probably quite aspirational for most people here, especially in California. From that point, how did you work back, like the last 5 years, 10 years? How did you set those goals and track them and break them down?
Yeah. So I think there's two sides to it. Number one is the I ams. So I'm a big I am guy. I literally have every I am book out there, every knowledge about I am. And so I'm really a big believer, and I don't want to go too much into the woo, because if you don't know, you don't know. And if you do, then you know exactly what I'm saying. But like, I'm really big. So when you'll see them, like, again, like, I'm a winner, I'm loved, I am healthy, I'm successful. So I have these huge I ams in my room. You know, I'm a successful business owner. I am changing people's lives. So my goals, before I even get to my goals, I go through my I ams. And then when I get to my goals, I'm really focused on my annual goals. And so I have a big, and you guys have all heard this before, but your year is your book, your months are your chapters. And so I will start out at the beginning of the year and map out my annual goals, what I have for my goals. They're always on the wall. They're always on the glass somewhere, on my window somewhere. I have to see them. I have no hidden goals. You can walk into my house. I just recorded a YouTube video on this. I said, how do you know you're dating a good girl? Something along those lines. And I was like, a Sharpie marker. Because I would write my goals on the bathroom walls. And if I brought a new girl or somebody I was dating over and she saw those goals written out on that bathroom and she even barely said anything negative, I knew that ain't the one. It's like, oh, you think you're going to do, like, boom, she's out. Like, you might stay one night, but you ain't coming back. So it was being able to have that stuff visualized for me. So I write it a year, I break it down by the month, and I hold myself accountable to never hide them. So that way I'm forced to see them. And I don't win them all. I wish I did, but at least I have to live in the pain or the joy of that's what I said I was going to do.
How did you start out with that? Was this you just started writing them down because you had nowhere else to write them down, or were you a vision board guy, or how did you get to the bathroom wall of all places? Yeah.
So definitely a vision board guy. And then that kind of gets expensive, and pieces of paper on the wall, and then it falls down and all this other stuff. So literally I have some of the most amazing, and actually I used to get them from car dealerships. This is before Amazon started selling them, but it's those really good right on glass markers. Now they're all different colors. It's a beautiful thing. But if somebody new came to my house, they'd be like, what is wrong with you? Like, I have Muhammad Ali quotes everywhere. I have Seneca quotes everywhere. But for me, it's just important. This is just me, right? But it's hard. I used to have one above my bed. This is when I was really, really, really insane with this. But it said, I must wake up every morning with determination if I'm to go to bed with satisfaction. And I had that literally written on the ceiling above. And you want to talk about some David Goggins voice in your ear? You read that in the morning, you just open your eyes and you're like, okay, buddy, got to get it. So that's kind of my self-motivation, because I just didn't have the friends or peer group around me that I knew would move me. So I had to move. I felt I had to move myself.
No, I can relate. It's difficult, especially because, most of us, we're not born real estate investors or business owners or entrepreneurs. Well, we're kind of born
Amen.
entrepreneurs. We just can't flex those muscles until we get a little bit of education and maybe a little bit of money. But I mean, it's, growing up around a certain number of people, and I don't think there's a single one of them that was in my close circle back in college and high school who are still in it. And that's unfortunate because I still love the guys and gals. We still keep in contact with a text message or a like on Facebook once in a while. That's about as far as those relationships have gone now. But you got to stick to those self-motivation things. And for me, it's books. It sounds like it's books for you as well.
Sure.
And vision boards. I love vision boards. So we usually save the book recommendations for the end, but I know everybody's got some special ones. You mentioned the Dave Thomas one a little bit ago. And what else would you throw out there for some people who want some motivation?
So like I have I have The Wolf of Wall Street, Zig Ziglar's Secrets of Closing Sale, The 50th Law by 50 Cent, Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss. These are all in my personal office where my little studio's at. But the number one, I'll step off course to get it, but the number one book that absolutely changed my life, it's called The Millionaire Course by Mark Allen. It is a money-making book. I've never seen a book make as many people. Did I buy it for everybody at Christmas? New friends that come in my life. It's my perennial annual Christmas gift for new guys in my life, guys and gals. But that book right there, man, it forces you to really draft out your vision. It holds you accountable throughout the book. It gives you some great insights. So that one book right there by Mark Allen is my go-to number one book of all time amongst all the books that I've read or consumed and known.
What do you think, John? You didn't say Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That doesn't feel right.
Phew. Yeah, we get that a lot.
Yeah, sure.
That's awesome. I'm going to be on your side, Scott, a little bit, and I want you to talk about your business because we haven't even touched upon that yet. So I'd love to dig into what you guys do and kind of why that's different in terms of traditional kind of wholesaling. Operations isn't the right word, but providing service in that lead generation call center space.
Yep. So first off, thanks for the opportunity. I'll set it with the framework. I felt when I entered into this industry, first off, it's an industry filled with people following vanity metrics. What are vanity metrics? They think a deal under contract is money in the bank. That's BS. It's not. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist until it hits your bank account. So vanity metrics is an issue. I also saw vanity metrics when it comes to lead flow. And so what you would see is people would get like tons of leads, but very little deals, because what this industry calls a lead, I call data. What I call a lead, they would call an opportunity. So it's like, we're just a step or two above. And then like when I started researching like people in the Philippines or Egypt or wherever it is, and not wherever they're geographically located, I realized that everybody was getting heartbeat in a home leads. They'd be like, oh, they have a heartbeat, they have a house here, wholesaler, call it. And so I couldn't scale my business off of that. So I moved down here to start a call center for myself. That was it. Only for my own REI investment company. I was just going to do it for myself, 10, 15, 20 agents max. And then like a buddy heard and was like, hey, can I get some leads? And somebody else heard and like, hey, can I get some leads? Before you know it, now we have over 100 affiliates nationwide that we send hyper qualified, hyper motivated leads to. And we do about 2.2 million dials a week right now out of our call center.
That's a lot of calls. And you've got how many employees are you guys?
North of 180. Almost.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That's great. So I mean, I was reading up on your, I was on your website checking out some of that stuff, doing some show note preps, and you describe yourself as an enterprise level call center. Can you maybe just go into a little bit about what that means and specifically what it is? Because, some of the people listening to this are pretty new to the real estate space. So what do leads mean? What do they mean whenever you guys are generating leads for wholesalers? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I'll hit on the word enterprise. So just think if anybody was doing 2 million dials in a week. Imagine the battle that you have to go through to get passed through the carriers, to be able to get your answer rates, your connectivities, to be able to avoid the spam likely. So when we say enterprise, it really just talks about the technology stack that we've invested in, from a dynamic phone number swapping. We can see what percentages of numbers are being picked up, and then it'll all of a sudden channel them to the better of them. So we have a live like spam likely feature in our phone platform. We're on the best dialer in the business, and we've invested so much money into that. We have all these conditional formats built into our call word track. So it's like we've invested a lot on the enterprise side. On the lead side, what's really important is that our average lead call is somewhere between 14 to 17 minutes long. So before it ever goes to Barbara and Steve, who own, husband and wife own a wholesaling company in North Carolina, I've already spent 15 minutes on the phone with that person, nurturing them, qualifying them, making sure they have a timeline, a reason, finding out all the details on the property, making sure every lead comes with a starting asking price that is at 70% or low, or 70% or lower of estimate. So when we say enterprise, it's like, I'm not in the volume space of leads. I mean, technically I am, but I'm in the length of conversation. So I care more about how long your conversations are with my leads than how many people that I send over to you, because that's what gets deals. People who actually pick up the phone are like, hey, yeah, I was expecting your call. How's it going? Like, that's a lead to me.
Amazing. In terms of that, and obviously there's an art to making a phone call. I used to work in telesales, as it's called, years ago, selling windows, right? So I know a little bit of the scared kind of nature of picking up a phone and dialing a number and that good stuff. Where do people, what's the kind of biggest mistake people make when they try and make a cold call or follow up on a lead, and what's kind of best practice over your career?
So one of the things that we teach people is something called a fronter closer model. And so that question really should be answered twice. So a fronter is like what I do here in my business. I'm reaching out, doing the cold prospecting, finding the lead, getting them hyper qualified, and then turning them over to a closer, which is like the affiliate office, and then they're doing their thing. So the question becomes is, where's the mistake that they can make on both sides? So on the fronting side, you really have to be resilient. You know, you might go through 170 answers. Screw you, go buy this, before you finally get that one really motivated call. And so here in my system, you don't really have a choice to be scared because it just force feeds you. But the advantage with our system is we have got them so educated on real estate 101, macroeconomics of real estate in the market, interest rates, like they can have a really good conversation. The bigger concern is on the closer side is there's a lot of hobbyists in a space where it should be all entrepreneurs. And so they get a lead and they treat it like a hobbyist. They get a lead and they don't call it but one time and they didn't answer. Well, they must not be interested because I left a voicemail. And it's like, buddy, they just spent 15 minutes on the phone with me. You left one voicemail. They don't know who you are. They don't like you. They liked me. Call them back up. Let them know, hey, you were just speaking with my team over at et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's it, man. It's just this phone fear has cost people millions of dollars. The people on the other side of the phone will never know who you are. They'll never see what you look like. We're closing. Do we have a monster wholesale investment track that we run from here as well, too, from a different continent? And like, if people could wrap their head around like, okay, well, this guy's in a different continent and he's locking up this amount of deals from a different continent. Damn, I should be able to do it in my backyard. So
that's really interesting. In terms of, so you said about the wholesaling aspect, in terms of the characteristics of a person who would succeed in that role. We've talked recently a lot about growing teams, and obviously that feeds into the scale conversation. What's your criteria for employing people, bringing people into your operation?
Yeah, so bringing in the closers, again, it's a fronter closer model. So I'll answer it for both real quick. On the fronting side, for me, I just need somebody that's moldable. Here, obviously, all I care about initially is the English fluency. We have so many expats, so many kids that sound like you with your accent, so many kids from Australia, the UK that live here because they went to school abroad and then they came back home because grandma got sick or whatever happened. So our English fluency is through the roof, but it's fairly easy, the criteria that we hire on the qualifying side. On the closing side, I can tell you what industries I love the most for sure. When I run an ad, I'm like, solar sales experience preferred, solar sales door to door, really door to door, anything preferred, timeshare sales preferred, car sales preferred. Those are the three industries. When I run, I put those in the graphic wherever we're displaying our employment, and when they respond, those boys and girls typically know how to close.
So what's I guess if you could give an avatar to a salesperson who's going to be on your call team, your closing team, for example, what does that person look like?
My ideal person is single. Doesn't matter, male or female. I don't care. I just like that they can grind their faces off because they want big money. They're typically in their 20s and they are hungry. They want to buy that first luxury car. They're willing to sacrifice. They're probably a degenerate, so we have to watch them on Fridays. But, they're just hungry rock star kids who are appreciative. And that's why I say, like, I really do enjoy these people that have paid their ways through their life through sales only, and maybe not an education or so, just because like they've had to grind their faces off. Like when you've been commission only, the last time I got a job or last time I got a true check would have been in 2001. So 21 years ago. And I know what it's like to not have a commission check hit in my 20s, not be able to pay rent and have to scrounge. It cuts you. It creates a monster. And so 20 years later, like those are the types of people that I look for.
Amazing. I keep saying amazing for some reason. Hey,
Amazing.
So thinking about the acquisition side, you mentioned
Yes.
working on acquisitions. What does that look like? What's that part of the business? How's that running?
Yeah, so that's really the closing side is what the verbiage that we use. So our closers are our acquisition guys. But support of the acquisition guys, you have your underwriting team, you have your back office. Then once we acquire the property, then we have our transaction coordinators, we have our dispo team, we have our buyer's engagement team. Like we're doing enough volume that we have now a really robust support staff for our wholesale operation. We also have a commercial line too. It's not a lot, but we have on October 28th, 26th or 28th, we have another self-storage facility closing. So it's like, hey man, this industry has really opened me up to be able to get into different segments because I'm a true believer of insert product here. Like I have an ecosystem here, dude. It could be solar, it could be roofing leads, it could be self-storage, it could be wholesale, it could be multifamily. The mechanism's in place. You could be selling leads. It's an assembly line, just waiting for a product to go down it.
I was going to say it sounds like a machine, right? That you can just plug in and wait for or not wait for the result, but it's designed to produce a result. In terms of growth for the organization, and you said about moving into different kind of real estate asset classes. What's next on your big list of goals or big mirror of goals?
Realtors. So for 2.5 years, and I say this with love and respect, but for 2.5 years, I've talked a lot of smack about realtors. I mean, a lot. I got some YouTube videos. They're not very nice. Some Instagram stories, just because my general experience has been like, okay, these are the guys and gals who aren't as aggressive with their leads as other segments of the real estate space. It's just, I feel like the nurture campaigns are better. I decided to test to see how wrong I was about that. And so we just launched a pilot campaign for realtors on listings, because that's really all that they need to do. They need to be able to get to that house to sign them up for the listing. So if I handle all the front end of the work for you, I pull the data, I qualify the prospect, I contact them up, I set a day and time for you to go out there, then you do your job. But it's gone amazing. So we first sold out the first 10 spots. On the first 3 leads, this just happened this month. Sold out the first 10 spots. They launch. I did one pilot launch prior to October 1st. October 1st, 10 spots go. Another 5 spots go November 15th. November 1st, and so forth. Anyway, so we've gotten 15 spots sold out, and the wait list is already coming up. So I'm really excited about being able to find those guys and gals who are aggressive, who are real estate agents who will work the leads. I don't need people who have, I don't mean this to be, but soccer dad, soccer mom mentalities. Like I want people that are hungry. We're going to call the leads as soon as I send it over. And I think that I'm really poised to disrupt the real estate agent market. I really do.
Yeah, I feel you on the soccer dad piece of that, or soccer mom piece of that. It's sometimes, especially in commission-based jobs, you can get people who don't necessarily take it seriously because this becomes their side money, and it makes it really difficult for the rest of the industry, including buyers and sellers. When you're talking about real estate brokers, If you've got time frames, you got things that need to get done, and to get an agent that doesn't take things seriously like that is so super frustrating. But big shout out to all my real estate friends out there who are realtors that do a really, really good job. We love you guys.
Yeah. No, listen, this first team that we matched with, dude, every single day we're getting progress reports. They locked up one list. They locked up this. I didn't realize how really good the money was because they locked up, this was Orlando, Florida. First 3 leads, they locked one up for 350,000 listing. And I was like, 350 times 6. I was like, gee, dude, oh, look at you guys, and it just keeps on going. So I really, anyways, I think it's a place that needs some disruption, because if I were these guys, every Joe Schmo who says, hey, I can generate leads for you, they're probably been the same type of leads that happen in the wholesale space where they're underqualified. They never should have been sent to the realtor in the first place. For decades, they felt like they've been wasting time every time they hire somebody because they haven't had somebody. What I tell people is, I would never send you a lead I wouldn't send myself. Like, I get it. I'm in the space. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to send you a bunch of crazy high volume of leads, but you're going to have a bunch of long conversations. And so that's been the platform that we've been blessed enough to build this off of.
Now, are you typically selling individual leads to individual clients? Are you generating lists? How are you typically going about your sales?
So on that vision board too. So our data company is really, really strong. And it's going, we right now only do it for my internal customers. Like, I own every single address in 8 states, like Florida, Tennessee, Georgia. I mean, like, I have Mar-a-Lago is one of my addresses. And so whether it's a 7-Eleven or whatever, and so we have all this really cool stuff that we're doing. But for most people, they're coming to me for an all-in-one package. They're like, hey, you're the expert. You already house and own the data. You already house and know the numbers that are right. So I'll charge them a package type fee, and we'll discuss about how many leads they need for their size of business. And then I'm a la carte. Like, if you look at a baseball diamond, baseball diamond, it's like first base is sourcing the data. Second base is qualifying the leads. Third base is putting the deal under contract. Fourth base is funding it from a wholesale. And so what I try to tell people is, give me first and second base. I want the first half of your operation. I want all the nonsense you're probably not that good at, because you should be a rock star closer and you really shouldn't be a data scientist. Like, I've hired him. Let me do that for you. So I try to do the front half of the operation. They do the back half. We look at their market. I can tell roughly what their CPL or cost per lead will be. We back that into a package price, and then we just rock and roll month to month too. Like I'm one of these things like, dude, it's got to be a marriage that works or not. So.
I like it. A question I tried out last week, and I think the week before, which is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, or what's the hardest lesson you've learned?
Best piece of advice I've ever given. I mean, that's so broad, because it's like, hey, we're talking about love, marriage, God, business.
Yeah, anything. I think it's all relevant, right?
Yeah, it is. So I'll pivot to the hardest lessons that I've learned. I think for me, one of the hardest lessons is being aggressive isn't necessarily appreciated. And so, my goals, my visions, my demeanor is such that it ruffles feathers in every kind of sphere that I get into. And it makes you cold, because I don't even want to build relationships with this guy, because I know I'm going to piss him off, because honestly, we're buddies, but I am trying to take you out only professional, because like, competition is competition, and we should steel sharpen steel. And damn it, I know you own this part of the space, but I'm going to bring in this, and you're going to have to increase this. And so it's really been one of those things where they say, not necessarily lonely at the top, but it's interesting that there's no friends in this industry when you're coming to take it on the way that I am. And it's been like, I was like, oh, I'll get in the real estate space. Well, I'll hug it out. They're like, that guy's a problem over here. And so here I go.
Yeah, no, I can. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And whenever you're trying to build something to be successful, any real entrepreneur, anybody who really wants to just knock it out of the park, they're going for one thing, and that's a monopoly. And everybody says, okay, monopolies are illegal, they're unethical. Well, they're not unethical. The fact of the matter is, if you put the best damn product out there that exists, people are going to come to you. And it's just the way that it works. And that should be the ultimate end goal for anybody who's trying to build a business, because yes, competition is healthy, but it forces prices down, typically, because people are trying to bid out the other person and this, that, and the other. But I tell you what, if you build something in a way that nobody can compete in the first place, I'd say that's a success anyways. I don't care. Your damn monopolies, who gives a shit about that?
Yeah.
That's more along the lines of just straight up success. And I like that. And, you know, just a little observation of you, Scott. I don't really think of it. You're just a sales guy, not just a sales guy, but you are a sales business builder. And I don't give a shit what the industry is. I think you're going to be successful in it. You know, let's say we hit this nasty recession that's coming, and it is. You know, it doesn't matter what happens, that you, like you said before, you've got it up here now, and you could probably build a business out of dang near anything. So I think that's pretty interesting stuff. You're putting a lot of awesome content out there.
Dude, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm ready for whatever comes our way in this industry for sure. We're poised. There's campaigns lined up to the side, whether it's debt settlement, restructuring. A really cool campaign that we just pilot launched is selling leads to attorneys for victims of unfair collection practices. And again, it's just one of those things, like guys will call me up like you guys, or we'll meet and we'll be at it wherever. And you're like, dude, let me just pilot it out. Like, let's just see how it goes. And it's like, oh shit, rocket ship. So yeah.
Scott, and I think to your point about aggressive and that kind of stuff, I think when I did cold calling, I felt like the same thing. I'm not particularly aggressive on the phone, but I'm not afraid to pick up a phone and call someone and have a direct conversation. And I feel like you could probably speak to this way more, but in 20 years, the world's changed and people don't like phone calls, and people are less inclined to speak directly and in a direct manner to people.
Yeah, I would say so. The issue or the advantage is that for some fucking reason, distressed people still, you know, it's like they used to have a saying when I sold timeshare. My very first job ever in sales was timeshare. So that's a really crazy industry. It's like not a good product. No disrespect to people out there that own them, but it's like, so I did that for 2 years. I was like, oh my God, I learned how to sell anything to anybody. But you used to say is like, oh my God, these people don't have any room on their credit card. They're all maxed on their credit card. And they would say, no, you don't understand. That's your ideal customer, because they buy everything that they see. And so figure out a way to make it work. That you want people who are maxed out, because that's the customer who can't say no. Same thing on the call center side. The people who are distressed in life, people who are going through a lot of these things, are the people that answer the phone. They just can't say no. Like, it's a really weird kind of segment on our end that we don't, as long as it doesn't say spam likely, these people are answering. And we know they have something screwed up in their lives. We can identify it immediately because of the data set that we're calling. And the reality is they need help. They're a hoarder. We can identify it. We can have intelligent, high-level conversations. And I think cold calling is thriving and alive right now, at least here at Lamassu.
Scott, thank you so much. That was a great conversation. I got a lot out of it. It's a world I don't know that much about, other than, like I said, college, John, phoning people, bothering them, all that good stuff. Scott, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much.
And we'll be back next week.
Thank you for listening to the Investories podcast. We all have a story. What's yours? The Investories podcast.